Please welcome David Gordon Green. And you all know the star of this film. I don't need to give him much of an introduction, but I will. He's done everything from blockbuster action movies to these great independent movies like this and everything in between. He won Academy Award winner, of course, for Leaving Las Vegas and over 60 films. Please welcome Nicolas Cage. Congratulations to you both on this movie, which really is, it's an extraordinary movie. It stayed with me since I saw it. It's haunting almost. You know, Nicolas, let me ask you, what drew you to this character? Because a few times that I've seen actors just so connect to a character, they just inhabit the role. I thought you inhabited this role. I couldn't separate you from the character here. Can you talk about that?
Well, thank you. First of all, I think I should mention that I took about a year off. I was going through a phase where I wanted to be extremely selective, and I wanted to, I had done what I wanted to do with sort of a more operatic, Baroque style of film performance and other pictures. And I wanted to take the wisdom of some of the life experiences that I'd been through over the last 2 years prior to Joe, where I could, without going into too much detail, take the negative of that and turn it into a positive by filling the vessel of the character of Joe with just emotional content, not have to act, not have to think too much, and just be. And when I read the script, I got a wonderful letter from David. I read it. I knew that his professor in the university that he went to wrote it, transcribed it from Larry Brown's novel. And I immediately connected with the dialogue, I immediately connected with the scenes, and I said, I understand this, man. I think I can play this without having to act. And then, of course, I wanted to work with David because I'd seen his marvelous work with Undertow and Josh Lucas's brilliant performance in that. And then on with Sam Rockwell and Snow Angels, and I knew that this was a man that would really be able to get a great performance from his actors, so that was really the decision.
What was that collaboration like for you? Because I know you were more involved than just as an actor. You were involved in a lot of the other aspects of the film too.
Well, because I took that time off, I was really eager to get back to work. First of all, I did meet David. I flew out from Las Vegas to Austin, Texas. We spent about two days together getting to know each other, walking in the woods and talking. And I just wanted to know how enthusiastic I was about the material. And when he did say, let's do it, it was a little time before we finally committed. I came out to Austin a month in advance because I wanted to really get in step with David's process, which is a playful process. It's a process that's full of, believe it or not, it's a light process. He encourages actors to improvise and to get comfortable with each other. I wanted to soak up Austin, Texas. I wanted to soak up the rural kind of suburban neighborhoods there and the people there. I got to work, run some dialogue, rehearse with the predominantly African-American crew, so it seemed like we'd been working together for years, and there was a flow to that. Got to meet Ty Sheridan, who I fell in love with him. I thought he had this vulnerable, beautiful quality, and I knew I could care for this man-child, and it would make my job so much easier.
You and Ty Sheridan are great. You had to have a relationship beyond what we see on the screen, off the screen, I think, to create that. Did you have a rehearsal time with him, or how did you create?
Well, I would always say that in some ways the relationship in the movie does mirror the relationship in that in our relationship, because Nicolas admired Ty's work ethic. He's serious about the work. He was totally on point and came in with all this emotion and these profound silences between the dialogues. And so I just admired him so much. And it was easy to play Joe because Joe admired his work ethic, Gary's work ethic. How old are you?
15.
Well, you got 45 seconds to tell me why I should hire you.
I built hay before I worked on a truck. I I picked tomatoes, zucchini, cucumbers, okra, squash.
All right, you're not afraid of work. Good. What's your name?
Gary Jones.
I'm Joe.
Now, David, let me ask you about this film and what brought you to it. I know you studied the work of the author, obviously, when you were in college, right?
Yeah, I had my first job after I graduated film school was working as a production assistant on a documentary about Larry Brown, the novelist that we based the movie on. It was called The Rough South of Larry Brown. It was directed by a college professor of mine, Gary Hawkins. And it was an amazing process, not only just the enthusiasm I have of the production process, but getting to know Larry, getting to know his work, and being inspired by his stories and also his own personal story, which we came to know Joe is a very personal story to him. And then when Larry passed away, Gary sent me an adaptation he'd done of Joe and said, "Hey, do you want to do this or you want me to?" so I got really excited about it and thought it would be kind of the perfect circle to kind of come to a point where I was realizing a story that had been really inspiring when I was kind of looking for those first seeds of inspiration of building confidence to jump into this industry.
And Larry Brown actually is known for a number of Southern-based novels that he wrote sort of later in his life. I guess he came into it. They call it grit lit. I love that phrase, grit lit.
Yeah. One of a handful of great contemporary Southern writers and inspiring body of work. He was a firefighter and worked a lot of jobs. Really identified with the Gary character of the young boy. Was in many ways Larry, representative of Larry, and so. He started later in life. He just kind of picked up a typewriter in his 40s and said, "Let's try to put some of these stories and some of these experiences on paper, and in a short period of time, create a pretty tremendous body of work."
I was trying to figure out when I saw this movie, what does it remind me of? And it's its own original film, but there's a little bit of echoes of Shane to this film.
That's very amazing that you say that, because I was thinking the last couple of days I've been traveling around talking about the movie and getting to know the movie in a strange way, because once you're done with the movie and it's done evolving, it's just the beginning of your own association and the layers that you start to understand about the movie. And someone had asked me what films I'd watched, because I know I'm a big movie nerd, and so they asked what films I watched to get ready for the movie, and there weren't any for this movie other than Shane. So you picking up on that is kind of amazing. I watched it on Netflix, and I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, but it really did have that kind of that connection between youth and wisdom that I really wanted this to have that kind of timelessness.
There's that thing, Nicholas, that comes through, this father figure that you become for him against all odds of your character's background in this movie. And suddenly he sort of pulls himself together for this guy. I thought it was incredibly moving, actually, to watch.
I think it was, David can probably get the 100% right what Professor Hawkins said, but that Joe was like a samurai waiting for poetic moment to die?
He's looking for the right death.
Looking for the right death. And I think it wasn't until Joe meets Gary and develops this father-son relationship that he understands the extraordinarily difficult circumstances that Gary is in, that he's found the right way to achieve that.
The casting, man, you're a genius when it comes to casting, because some of this, when I'm looking at this film, they're clearly non-actors in this movie, but they're so authentic. And then there's actors, and you mix them all so well together. Can you talk about that?
The casting process is my favorite thing in the world. Putting great actors to great characters and bringing stories to life. It's the exploration of casting. It's anybody that knows me in that casting process sees the excited 11-year-old boy that can't wait to make movies. As you're starting to put the pieces together, and I had the tremendous experience early in my career of working with the casting director Mally Finn when she was living, and she, you know, she's one of the great casting directors of all time, and I was kind of one of her charity cases when I was making movies that didn't cost much money, and she certainly wasn't getting paid more than $5 to kind of lend a hand to the casting process, not only connecting me to some of the notable actors, but also the discovery of new talent and me taking in helping navigate me into where to take risks on charisma, confidence, or craziness. You know, these things that you can really that can be a great asset for a director. Those three things in particular I find very valuable. And so she was really inspiring in that, and we'd do casting calls just for no reason for movies that would never happen, and you know, so just call people into a room and see what might light the inspiration. And so on this film, John Williams and Carmen Leach were two local casting directors I'd been working with in Austin, and just I'd been working with them in commercials, and I said, hey, I've got this project, it's a little left of center, and I want to try to find a real authenticity. I want voices, I want faces that aren't going to be at a Hollywood casting call. I want these people to kind of, I want these to be explorations to find these places, these people. So they would, Gary Poulter, the actor that plays Ty's father in the movie, they met at a bus stop, and he'd been living on the streets for 9 years. The sheriff
Never acted before.
had never acted before. Well, he was a breakdancer on the street. So that's why, so I had to use the popping lock because me and him love to breakdance. The sheriff was my next door neighbor, who I just know. He just talks cool. The guy that was the foreman of Joe's Crew, who's hilarious. He owns a barbecue restaurant, Sam's Barbecue in Austin, and he just talks shit. So he just makes me laugh all the time. And a lot of the work crew were guys that we get at the Day Labor Center. And then there's some great regional actors and great actor Ronnie Blevins, who played Willie Russell in the movie. It was just, you know, yay Ronnie. He was a face that I saw when I saw The Dark Knight Rises. There was a garbage truck driver, and I was like, "Who's that guy?" and then my friend Deanna introduced me to Ronnie, and so it was really cool to, you know, kind of non-traditional ways, and just trying to find who's special to look at and turn a camera on.
I got to ask Nicholas about working with Gary Poulter here, because Gary Poulter, you may have seen at the very end of the film, died actually a couple of months after the film was done. This is his first thing. He's an extraordinary actor. What was that like?
Well, the first thing I want to say about Gary is that he had this incredible version of Vincent Price's monologue from the Alice Cooper Welcome to My Nightmare album, The Black Widow. And he could do it anywhere, at any moment, at any time, it just verbatim, and it was quite good. And I was up for it. I met with, David and I went to lunch with Gary, and we were talking, and I thought he had this beautiful kind of Civil War looking face. He reminded me of Richard Farnsworth. Like he could be a cowboy or he could be a Civil War captain, and he just had this charisma about him too. I was aware that he was not a professionally trained film actor, obviously, and there were a lot of big stars that wanted that part. And thanks to David, he gave it to Gary, but I thought this is an opportunity to have something new possibly happen, like get into the jazz of wherever this is going to go, we're going to find something together, and it's going to be different than anything I've done before, because I've never had an experience like that before. So anytime you can achieve something new, it tends to stimulate you to find something. And that's what the experience was like with Gary. The sad thing is, when I did say to Gary, you know, if he could just keep it together for 1 year. I knew he had a bit of a problem, but he always showed up for work, he was on time, he had all his dialogue. And I just said to keep it together for a year, and I promise you, your phone's gonna ring, and your life is gonna change. And then 2 months after we wrapped, I got the call from David that he had died, and I was very upset about it, you know, because I really think his life would have changed.
Wow. It's an extraordinary story. It's almost like he came out of nowhere for you on this movie, and it seems so right.
Yeah, it's interesting. He had just gotten fired from working at the circus. and so he was on his way back to Austin to try to figure out what to do after having a little stint with the traveling circus. And yeah, just a man looking for a change and looking to do something different. And I really, it was a difficult thing to kind of process.
Nicholas, for you, I think I noticed in all your work, you always seem to be looking for something different yourself, something that's going to challenge you, take you out of whatever you did the movie before. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, I want to keep challenging myself. I never refer or think of myself as a maestro. I always see myself as a student. I think that's the right way to look at it, so you're learning something. When Joe came along, I was also going through this kind of new concept for myself, a kind of like dogma-style approach to film performance where I wanted, absolutely no fake tears, absolutely no outside influences, my voice only 100%, so they could be as natural as possible. I was also at this point where I had done, as I said earlier, what I wanted to do with a kind of what I call Western kabuki style of film performance. I was designing characters from the outside, and I don't believe in the words over the top. You show me where the top is, and then I'll tell you whether or not I'm over it. I just don't. Does anybody know where the top is? Please, somebody answer that for me. But the thing that was important for me at this point was I did the Baroque styles, I did the Andy Warhol concepts of drama, and now I wanted to be as naked, meaning as emotionally bare as possible without overthinking it or designing it.
Well, before I open it, some questions from the audience, I got to ask you about another co-star of yours, which is one of the best relationships I've ever seen between an actor and an animal. You and this dog are absolutely extraordinary together. And what was that? How do you do that? I mean, I know it's...
I remember David called me and says, well, we've got this badass American bulldog. Are you going to be okay working with animals like that? And I said, well, not only okay with it, I welcome it. And it's no secret that I love dogs. I have 5 of them myself. I did want, her name was Faith. She was a rescue dog, is a rescue dog. She liked to run off, and sometimes she would jump over the fence, and we'd have to find her. She'd smell a cat and disappear, and then we'd shut down production for a couple hours and pull her back. But I really wanted to take her home with me. I wanted to adopt her, but my wife said, we have 5 dogs already. I think that's enough, Nicholas. And I said, okay, but now I look at this movie, and she's a big star, and she could have been sitting at the dinner table with us.
And you're not brought with that snake, too, which looked very real to me.
Yeah, well, that was 100% real. That was a day that was pretty intense for both David and myself. That was an important scene. It was a 5-page scene. It was the first meeting between Gary and Joe. And it's important to be relaxed, but sometimes the adrenaline can go in the wrong direction. And for me that day, because I had the pressure of the scene, the adrenaline was going in the wrong way. And I knew from doing a lot of adventure films that stunts, oddly enough, I'm one of those people where stunts actually relax me. They slow me down, kind of like if I have entirely too much coffee, I get relaxed and I go to sleep. Probably would have been a good candidate for Adderall, though I'm not on any medication. So getting back to the point of the snake, when they said they had an actual live cottonmouth snake with actual venom that could kill me, I said, well, let me override this fear and let me get a bigger fear with the snake, and I'll hold it and I'll pick it up, and that way I won't be scared about the scene anymore. I'll be scared about the snake. So David said, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, I am totally sure I want to do this. And you promised me, David said, you won't get bit and die 2 weeks into production. And I said, I promise you, David, I promise you. Now, what he didn't know was that I've never held a poisonous snake before. I saw a picture in a book of a man holding a snake behind the head like that so you don't get bitten. I said, I think I can do that. But he didn't know this was how little I was aware of what to do with the snake. But I did manage to pick it up. And then the challenge was, because David wanted to see the fangs of the snake, he loved those fangs, the challenge was to hold it in such a way where the poison wouldn't spit into Ty's face. So then I had to turn it that way but still get it on camera. And then the other challenge was tossing the snake in such a way that it wouldn't reverse itself in midair and then bite me on the neck. So I had to throw it that way, but gently, because I actually liked the snake, and I didn't want the snake to get hurt.
David, you're a very trusting director here, obviously. That's amazing.
And let's face it, many great stories begin with a snake.
It's amazing. All right, so I'm sure you got questions out there. Most gratifying moment on screen or off screen? David, you want to take that first?
I mean, I find I find a great satisfaction in the production process, and I think I don't know that there was a moment, but I think there were a series of moments when I was seeing the connection between the Joe character and the Gary character really come to life, and feel that father-son bonding. That's when I felt like we were doing justice to Larry's novel, which was really important to me. So I think that satisfaction was probably the most gratifying part of the experience.
I would say, for me, going back to the snake for 1 second, the most gratifying moment was surfing the adrenaline of getting the snake and holding it and doing the scene and then not dying. But on camera, I would say the most gratifying moment is the scene between Joe and Gary and the embrace. I thought that was a powerful moment, and it was unforced, and it felt it flowed with time myself.
The whole thing with your performance in this film, it's like you're ready to explode, but you don't. You don't. You hold it back, and then when you do, it's like so real.
Well, David and I worked on that carefully together. I mean, it was something we talked about even early on before we were in Texas together. He would write me emails saying, we're going to keep it on simmer. It's set to boil. We're redoing the script to get it right there. But there's little moments in the movie where tiny little gestures speak volumes. For example, like when Gary Poulter hits Ty Sheraton early on and Joe sees it and he opens the truck door and then he decides to close it. It's that sort of on the fence, that balancing act. Am I going to go all the way back in? No, now's not the time. Am I not? So David and I would design that a little bit together.
That's great. Yep. Okay, right back there. Yes, sir.
Great question about the scene when Joe pulls up on the Jeep. He gets his new truck, pulls up on the Jeep, rolls down the window, and has a little eye exchange with the woman. It's an example of a scene that was in the novel. Joe had an ex-wife, and early in the novel, early in the screenplay, early in the production, Joe goes to ask her to lunch, and she works at the post office. Goes to ask her to lunch, and we get to know a lot about Joe. We get to know he has an ex-wife, and we get to know the situation. His pieces are put together in a lot of ways in that scene, and we filmed it, and really nice performance. But for me, what I loved about the pacing that we explored, and we ended up where we ended up. Actually, Colin Patton, our editor, was suggested lifts the scene where he's revealing who he is to us. Like let's lift some of the exposition of him early on in the film, so we kind of unfold that at a more delicate pace. And then when we lifted that, there were two things that I found very striking. One is that we reveal that he's a grandfather before we've even considered him being a father, which I think is fascinating and deep. And then the other thing is leaving the scene where she shows back up and he pulls up and he rolls down his window. I found without seeing the setup of that or the necessarily the understanding of that, we get it. And it felt even more powerful having that second scene without the first. So that was just an editorial decision. It just felt like an interesting moment without saying anything at all. It says a lot.
Nicholas, did it help you having the book? Did you study the book a lot in creating the character beyond what was in the script?
Yeah, I got a little bit religious with the book, I must say. I would read it several times. I bought a first edition hard copy, spent a little bit of money on that, and I'd put my notes in the book because I wanted to have that as a sort of a souvenir of the experience. There were a couple little things that when we got into the rehearsal process, that I wanted to cherry pick from the novel. I thought, and David and we talked about it, I thought, well, let's have that wonderful moment that's so beautifully described in the novel where Joe is actually performing a kind of surgery on his shoulder. And the way it was written was so gritty. He would hold the character would hold the alcohol bottle with his chin onto his shoulder like it's disinfecting it in some way, and then crudely excavating these buckshot shells. And I had seen James Franco's movie where what was the name of the movie where he lost his arm, had to chew his arm off?
127.
Yeah, and I thought that was those moments where you see that kind of pain, where you can act pain, physical pain can speak volumes for a character. And so David and I decided to put that back into the script, and I think it paid off because it spoke volumes about Joe and who he was as a man.
It's kind of fun when you have the wealth of a novel that's so beautifully written, and it's a 347-page page book, and so you've got all of that when you've condensed it, and when Hawkins had done the adaptation of it, you have all that to play with. And then the other thing you have to play with is Nick's brain and Ty's brain, and coming up with things, which was really fun. Thinking about the gratification of the production process, seeing that scene where they're in the boat graveyard, and they're talking about the cool face. Nick brought up the idea of this lighter that he would have that has this ping that gets the hookers excited. All these things are just improvised that took what was a great book, what was a fantastic screenplay, and took it to the next level of performance, because these guys just bring so many cool little details and ideas to it.
It was pretty magical the way that little moment of the lighter, which was kind of a lark on my part. I thought, I heard this ridiculous story about a guy that had a DuPont lighter because of the ping sound. It was his mating call, and he got hookers. And I thought, I got to put that in a movie. But then we put it in the movie, and then it magically helped track the scenes, because then I give it to Gary's character, and then he takes it. Then I try to light a cigarette. I don't have a lighter. And then I was always trying to figure out, why would I invite his father into my truck? And voila, it worked it out, because I had a cigarette in my mouth. I didn't have a lighter, and I asked him if he had a light. So of course he's going to get in my truck. So it worked out.
It's perfect. Makes sense. Yeah, right here. Yes, sir. What is the setting of the book bring to the table?
Yeah, and just the South in general to any.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. As a setting, I've always lived in the South, from Arkansas to Texas to North Carolina, Louisiana, Georgia. It's something I know, and I feel like when I make very personal projects, it's easiest for me to make something that I know. I relocated it. The novel takes place in Mississippi, but I brought it to Bastrop and Taylor and Lockhart, Texas, because I know them and know the voice, and wanted to bring an authenticity to that, specifically as a backdrop, as a character. But I just love the South because it's just full of bullshitters and storytellers, and that's kind of fun.
What's it like shooting there? You shot in Texas. You didn't shoot like somewhere, like go to Vancouver or something. So.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed working in Texas and making a movie in Austin for the first time. It's true, I'm originally a native of California. I grew up here for the first 15 years of my life and spent a lot of time here, but I can also say that in a way I became a man in the South. I've spent many, many years in the South, in New Orleans, and I'm comfortable there. I didn't feel in any way that I wouldn't be able to bring that regional quality to it because of my experiences in the South, in New Orleans, in Louisiana in particular. But yeah, I really wanted to walk around in David's world, and that's why I went early to Austin, to soak up the area and to get a little sense of the culture. We went to a couple of bars together, and I just spent some time looking at everything, and I think that helps.
One time we went to a bar, this is funny, and the bar where we shot the movie, I took Nick to. One night while we're kind of going through the rehearsals, and I kind of liked introducing him to the locations where we're going to be shooting. And so we're at this bar, and sometimes when Nick walks into a bar that's like off the beaten path, some people turn their heads. Imagine that. But one guy that was kind of the biggest, baddest, meanest of them all walks up, and he's just like, "Excuse me, Mr. Cage, I just want to let you know how much I love Captain Corelli's mandolin." That made me happy for a week.
That's great. Someone from this side. Yes, sir.
The grocery store was awesome. We had to Chris Spellman, our production designer. Is he here, Chris? Yeah, there's Chris. Spell and I dug around a lot of these locations. We found this place. It was out by the airport, and it was full of so much stuff. We actually had to remove probably a third of what was in there to be able to get a camera in that convenience store. So that was a beautiful place.
Okay, yes.
I was wondering, how do you sort of reconcile the weirder aspects of being famous, like being an internet meme or the subject of an episode of Community, and reconcile that with more honest acting?
Okay, he's just talking about the idea of fame right now versus true acting. And
Well, I could probably write a thesis on this one at this point. Well, let's break it down. Let's begin by saying that I do subscribe to the theory that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So thank you. I'm flattered. I also think the nail that stands out gets hammered down. But I will say that maybe the reason why these YouTube mashups of me freaking out became so popular is because in every man and in every woman, there's the potential to be a Joe or the potential to be a vampire's kissing Peter Lowen, do the alphabet and scream in your psychiatrist's face. And I think people can understand that, and there's an id release there, and they're getting off on it vicariously, so I'm going to take it as a compliment. But perhaps more seriously, listen, fame has devolved. The concept of fame, or the ways, not fame, celebrity, which is a word I take great umbrage with, has devolved. James Dean, Marlon Brando, Elvis Presley, Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney did not have to live in a world where everybody has a smartphone, and in that smartphone is a video camera. And all people are human, including movie stars, and everybody makes mistakes, and that person sitting over there in that coffee shop watches that movie star who's human making a mistake and videotapes it and uploads it virally or tweets it and puts it on Facebook, and suddenly it's world news. That's a whole other thing. And the other thing that I wonder about is, you can be a pretty face and walk on the red carpet having had a bottle of alcohol and have no skills in acting, no skills in singing, and make a scene on the red carpet and become more famous than any Oscar winner or any Grammy winner, just like that. So it's a different experience today, and the jury's still out on it. I don't really know what else to say about it, but I am just making a sociological observation about that.
except that performances live on, and you're immortal.
Well, thank you. That's
You
very
are.
kind of you to say so.
Because that lives on way beyond the Kardashians.
This isn't a vampire joke, is it?
No, but by the way, nobody's ever recited the alphabet like you have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very proud of that.
Enough said with that. Okay, couple more right there, yes.
Questions for Nick. What was it like acting with Ronnie Blevins? Willie.
I really adore Ronnie Blevins. I think that guy is so cool. He's cool as a man. He's cool to watch on camera. I love the time he takes. I love that there's an inner humor going on and an incredible pathos. His silences are as profound as his dialogue. I would like to make all my movies with Ronnie Blevins.
Okay, we got time for one more, and I think right over there. Yeah, your hand is up. Go ahead.
This is one for Nicholas, and clearly you bring a lot of emotional intensity to this role. And I was wondering kind of what your process is for when at the end of the day you kind of have like the emotional come down or release from shooting such an intense movie. How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's a great question. And I can tell you that when I finished Joe, it was very easy because I loved the process of making Joe, and that's because of David, because he keeps it light. There's a lot of laughter. Even that dog fight, the dogs were playing with a growl put over it on the soundtrack. So I finished the movie feeling I had a song in my heart, but that doesn't always happen. I mean, I just finished a movie a month ago, and I'm still trying to get over it, and that was called Dying of the Light. Paul Schrader directed it, and it was very demanding, and I'm wiped out by it. And I hope it works. I hope it's a great movie. I think it will be, but I'm having a little bit of trouble, and I hope it's not because I turned 50, coming off of it. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and we'll take one more if somebody else, and then we're done. Yeah, right there.
Favorite thing in the movie is your choice of costumes, as people have mentioned in Wild at Heart, the snakeskin jacket. In this film, oddly enough, my favorite thing that you guys chose, is the director and actor, is the Pantera shirt.
That was Nick's
Pantera.
choice.
Talk about that, yeah.
I love Pantera. It's no secret. And they're the great Southern rock band. And I didn't want to, as much as I do admire country music as well, I'd seen it quite a bit in movies, and I wanted to show the countryside of rock and roll, like metal, like harder rock. So Pantera to me was like the most badass Southern band I could wear in a t-shirt.